Okay, permit me to present some rare good news for democracy. Over the weekend, 73% of the Polish population braved long lines at polling places to reject their right-wing government. After an 8-year grip on power, they opted instead for a 3-party coalition of opposition parties, which will now have to cobble together a parliamentary majority. Anne Applebaum writes in The Atlantic, quote, "The victory of the Polish opposition proves that autocratic populism can be defeated, even after an unfair election. Nothing is inevitable about the rise of autocracy or the decline of democracy." It is important to keep that in mind as we prepare for an election a year from now that will determine whether we remain a democracy. And who better to talk about all of that than our very own Rachel Maddow, host of the eponymous Rachel Maddow Show. And Rachel Maddow, there is no show at the end of it, which is what makes it super cool, and author of the new book, Prequel, An American Fight Against Fascism. As I live and breathe, let's toast our books, because we have two.
Thank you very much.
One.
Cheers.
So boom, we're going to toast
Mine's the one that's all marked up with my initials all over it.
We
it's like,
do the same thing. The sad thing about it is,
you and I deface books.
I can't lend people books because they're all dog-eared with like notes and stuff. And I'm like, if you just don't look at the notes and where I underline, go ahead and enjoy it.
There is a lot of ways in which you and I are kind of intellectual sisters. But the first time we ever talked about a book together, and I saw the way you had destroyed yours, I was like, I know we're not genetically related, but clearly we are partly the same person.
Clearly. And the obsessed with history, like a lot. We go in the same wormholes. It's wild. But so let's talk about this, because the Polish election actually made me feel hopeful.
Yeah.
And my name is ironic, so usually I'm not hopeful. I'm usually incredibly pessimistic. But I'm like, okay, Poland's been a concern. They came out, they used the sort of standard process of voting to oust their autocracy.
Yes.
Does that make you hopeful?
It does.
For us?
Absolutely. I mean, we've seen what happened in Poland. I mean, I think also don't sleep on the fact that one of the things that happened in Poland, one of the ways they activated the electorate in Poland was by full stop banning abortion. And Poland was a very conservative country that had a lot of restrictions on abortion, but they went whole hog with that ban, and it electrified the Polish electorate.
Yeah.
And that was part of the reason, with women in the lead, that they said no to that government that had started taking apart Poland as a democracy. They had started taking apart what makes a country a democratic country, turning it into an autocracy. They'd had 8 years of work on that. It'll be hard, actually, in Poland when the new coalition government takes over for them to be able to govern and operate, given how much of the rest of their government was undermined and taken over by the would-be autocrats who they just beat. But it worked. And that's, in a way, that's also the story of Jair Bolsonaro getting voted out in Brazil. It is the story of Donald Trump getting voted out in 2020. It is the story of a lot of the bad guys in Congress who were working with a Nazi agent who were at the center of this book in 1944. In the 42, 44, 46 elections, those guys got voted out once people knew what they were doing. I have a lot of faith in democracy. That's why I believe it's worth fighting for.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I'm so obsessed with voting is that it's the most boring answer to how you fix these sort of challenges in the country, but it's actually the answer. And if you let 73% turnout, that is where
they had more turnout in Poland for this election than they did for the election in 1989, where they voted out communism.
There you go.
I mean, that tells you how electrified those people were.
Okay, now for the bad news.
Now for the joy.
Welcome to D.C. Welcome to D.C., where everything is bad. Because what's happening in our government right now is so chaotic and insane, and at a really bad time. When you've got the world blowing up, we do not have a Congress that is functioning because the House of Representatives has no speaker. And for those who are not into the geekery of civics, it means they can't bring a bill to the floor. They can't do the normal functions of government, and the government will shut down in 40 days. What's happening right now? Number one, does it shock you, like it shouldn't, that Matt Gaetz bumped off the speaker with no plan, and that Republicans can't coalesce around anyone? Jim Jordan, the flame-throwing insurrectionist, he got fewer votes this time than he did the first time around. There doesn't seem to be a plan.
There does not seem to be a plan, but that may have been the Matt Gaetz plan.
Maybe that's the plan.
I mean, if the idea is that part of what's going on in the Republican Party is that there is effectively a group that is acting like nihilists. What does nihilist mean? It means you really don't care about the outcome. It's destroy without reckoning with what's going to be left in the rubble. Well, you know, if you're trying to replace our form of government with a strongman form of government where the Congress doesn't matter and the judiciary is just a tool of the strongman leader and the whole rule of law doesn't exist, it's just another tool that he uses to reward his friends and punish his enemies, I mean, then, yeah, effectively abolishing the House of Representatives as a governing body is the point.
Yeah.
Not having a new idea for speaker,
yeah,
that's like a benefit, not a bug.
Yeah.
And so I feel like the way that we got here goes through the MAGA caucus and the Republican Party. I think that we should see them as effectively a nihilist part of our politics. But now the Republicans do have to figure out something to do. And this thing that emerged today where they're going to say that there's not a speaker anymore. Right. We now have a temporary speaker,
correct,
which means we don't have to vote for him. I'm sorry. We actually have a constitution.
Yeah.
We
can't just make it up.
We have rules about these things. It's like saying somebody's a substitute teacher when they're there from day one of the school year all the way through to graduation. They're not a substitute teacher.
Right.
You need to actually have a speaker. And if you guys can't elect one, let the Democrats do it.
And the thing that's so, to me, sad about the Republican Party in this iteration is that 6 of them could fix this. Yeah. 6 of them could just vote for Hakeem Jeffries. Now, you may not love Hakeem Jeffries' policies if you are a Republican, but at least he'd make the place function. Or they could come up with somebody that Democrats could send a coalition, because Hakeem Jeffries, he can do a vote count. He could send them 20 people if they needed it to elect a speaker who's reasonable, but they won't take either option. The supposed moderates in the party just won't do it because they're terrified of Donald Trump, the threats that they've been getting from Jordan, the attempts for him to be Donald Trump. Yeah. Number one, the Donald Trump Act only works for Donald Trump. So no one else can replicate that but him. So they have a choice of either rejecting the whole idea of Trump and not act and pretending he doesn't exist and functioning, or this, and they're choosing chaos.
Joy, I feel like the thing that we need to start getting our heads around here, though, is that if the point of this whole process starting was to make the House of Representatives no longer exist as a governing part of the U.S. federal government, that may be the result that we have for a long time. Yeah. There isn't a way out of it for them. Unless they're going to do some power sharing thing or some trick play with the Democrats, there isn't a way out of it. And having Patrick McHenry be named speaker without voting for him does not work in the American system of government. That is not a way out of this. And so sometimes things go slow until they go fast. Yeah. And one of the things that has happened is that the Republican Party has effectively abolished half of Congress. Yeah. And that is how we are living right now. And there is no easy way out of it. And we may need to start thinking about what that means in very extreme terms. Yeah. I mean, they've effectively done it. They've made part of the U.S. government go away. Now what?
And the thing about it is that, and this is kind of a perfect setup for talking about the book, because when the version of far right wing movement, politicians participated in attempting to overthrow our democratic form of government and replace it with a fascist form of government, the difference between them and these clowns we have now is they had a plan. They had a thing they wanted. And maybe what's saving us is that these guys don't have a plan and they don't have a thing they want.